A total cult. Keith Raniere and NXIVM. What is a cult? Max Weber, the sociologist, found that cults are based on charismatic leadership, which often follow the routinization of charisma. Many cults have as their leader one of our kind, the narcissist. This occasional series will examine various cults and organizations which manifest as cults through the lens of narcissism. What is important for you to understand is this is not about whether I regard these cults as good or bad. You can make your own mind up about that. Instead, the purpose of this analysis is to demonstrate to listeners the fact, which is unknown to many, that many cults are run by narcissists. The ethos, the mindset, and the behavior of cults are set by narcissists, and the impact on people within cults is as a consequence of the behavior, characteristics, and perspective of narcissists. Many people will talk about a cult leader without realizing what that person actually is, i.e., a narcissist. Furthermore, what it also means is that without realizing what a narcissist is, people fail to recognize a whole range of behaviors, mindsets, perspectives, and characteristics which are applicable and need to be understood to make sense of why this person has behaved in the way that they have and why it has impacted on people. By demonstrating that the cult leader is in fact a narcissist, this allows people an important and greater degree of understanding. This video examines Keith Raniere and the NXIVM company. My observations purely about the presence and effects of narcissism are based upon freely available material. I recognize that some people may call into question the veracity of such material, and if they wish to do so, that is a matter for them. But it is not something that I am interested in debating with individuals, because that is an adjunct to the issue of the analysis vis-a-vis narcissism. If you do not accept the premise of the material, that is a matter for you. But if you do, then you must understand what this means in terms of the interaction that is narcissism. The aim of this material is to provide you with analysis and understanding based upon this available material, so you understand that this is a narcissist at work. In this episode of A Total Cult, I will utilize primarily a recent article from the New York Times reporting on Keith Raniere's conviction, and also the responses of certain individuals who continue to defend their experience with Keith Raniere. I analyse this material and explain how this links to narcissism to aid your understanding. NXIVM is a self-proclaimed American multi-level marketing company based in New York, a suburb of Albany, which offers personal and professional development seminars through its executive success programs of large group awareness training. The company has been widely described as a cult and was alleged to have been a recruiting platform for a secret society variously called DOS or The Vow, in which women were branded and forced into sexual slavery. In early 2018, NXIVM's founder, Keith Raniere, and his associate actress Alison Mack were arrested and indicted on federal charges related to DOS, including sex trafficking. Others associated with NXIVM were charged with federal crimes. As of April 2019, 5 people associated with NXIVM, Mac, co-founder Nancy Salzman, Lauren Salzman, Seagram heiress Claire Bronfman, and bookkeeper Kathy Russell, had pleaded guilty to a variety of charges. Raniere was convicted in federal court of sex trafficking and racketeering on June 19th, 2019. On September 30th, 2020, Claire Bronfman became the first defendant sentenced in the case when she was ordered to serve 6 years and 9 months in federal prison. After Raniere's conviction, he continued to direct loyalists from behind bars, encouraging continued recruitment. At his direction, members of the group have regularly danced outside Raniere's jail and staged coordinated protests of individual prosecutors. In September 2020, it was estimated that around 50 to 60 people remained very loyal to Raniere, who was sentenced to 120 years in prison in October 2020. With that brief background in place, let us work through a description of the behaviour of Raniere in relation to NXIVM, and in so doing, enable you to understand that this is a narcissist at work. The material is taken from a New York Times article by Nicole Hong. For years, Keith Raniere won glowing endorsements from Hollywood actresses, millionaires, and Ivy League graduates who studied his teachings during self-help classes offered by his company, NXIVM. As we see already, that by involving people who are Hollywood actresses, millionaires, and Ivy League graduates, and dealing with the upper echelons of society in terms of success, financial firepower, and intellect. Most of them, the article continues, have now distanced themselves from Mr. Raniere after he was convicted and sentenced to 120 years in prison for using NXIVM to commit sex trafficking and other crimes. Among other things, a jury found that women in NXIVM were recruited under false pretenses to join a secret sorority that Mr. Raniere formed, where they were branded with his initials near their pelvises, groomed to be his sexual partners, and kept in line with blackmail. That jury's findings demonstrate several aspects of the behaviour of a narcissist. First of all, recruitment. The recruitment of individuals to do the bidding of the narcissist is, of course, the assertion of control, and which is one of the prime aims of the narcissist. Recruiting them under false pretenses is part of the seduction process. Any of you who have been a victim of a narcissist will be familiar with the lies, the future faking, the false promises, the promised gain, the promised change, the threat and loss that occurs when a narcissist is seducing you. The flattery, the compliments, the bribery, all of those things take place in order to assert control over you and to draw you under the control of the relevant narcissist. None of it is genuine. It is entirely false. This has to be done, of course, because at that early stage, if we were clear about our intentions for you, you would run a mile. If I sat down in a bar and said to a lady, "Hello, my name is H.G. Tudor. I'm a narcissistic psychopath. I want to control you, draw fuel from you. I will treat you very well, and then I will abuse you. Would you like to be my girlfriend?" She should scream and most likely run away from me. Accordingly, I have to utilize the false pretense of appearing interesting, charming, kind, thoughtful, supportive, humorous, entertaining, magnetic, charismatic, and so forth, in order to draw that individual in. Similarly, this cult, this organization, operated in a way by utilizing false pretenses for the purposes of drawing the individuals to it. The fact that a jury found that women who were recruited were branded with his initials demonstrates a particular grandiosity, objectification, the viewpoint from the narcissistic perspective that these individuals are possessions. As I have explained in other material, we regard appliances, people, as our possessions, and to brand them in this way merely demonstrates the narcissistic mindset at its fullest. Grooming individuals to be the sexual partners also demonstrates the assertion of control. Sex is a massive weapon of seduction, and if you want to understand more about it, I direct you to read the eye-opening, jaw-dropping book that is Sex and the Narcissist, which you'll find on Amazon. Narcissists, especially somatic and elite narcissists, those are cadres, which are applicable to the various schools of narcissist, use sex habitually and regularly for the purposes of asserting control and gaining fuel. Grooming those individuals to become his sexual partners shows a lack of boundary recognition. These individuals were being signed up to study the teachings and be involved in self-help classes. They were not signing up to become concubines. But of course, the sense of entitlement of Raniere, his lack of boundary recognition, the absence of emotional empathy, and this rampant sense of entitlement and lack of accountability towards these individuals means that grooming them to be sexual partners is not an issue for him. The finding also of the jury that these individuals were kept in line with blackmail demonstrates a further assertion of control, a sense of entitlement, and a lack of emotional empathy for those affected by it. Trial evidence produced demonstrated that Mr. Raniere possessed child pornography. Not all narcissists, of course, are involved in paedophilia, but numerous ones are. Similarly, with Mr. Raniere possessing such material, that this demonstrates, again, a sense of entitlement, objectification, and a lack of emotional empathy. He has a lack of emotional empathy for the individuals depicted in that pornography. Trial evidence demonstrated that he manipulated his followers by keeping them starved and self-deprived, and that he committed a long list of federal crimes. Starving an individual is an assertion of control. It also demonstrates a lack of emotional empathy. Sleep deprivation is a relatively frequent manipulation utilized by the narcissist. Clearly, once again, it is the assertion of control. However, where you're starved and sleep deprived, you're weakened. Your critical faculties are diminished, which means that you become more pliable, easier to control. And therefore, not only does such behaviour represent the assertion of control and the absence of emotional empathy, it also demonstrates that such behaviour results in the relevant appliances within the cult being easier to control. The article explains that notwithstanding all of these facts, there are a handful of these recruits who insist that Mr. Raniere changed the world for good, and now they are unleashing a public campaign to undermine his conviction. You might ask, why do these individuals behave in such a way? There are two answers to that. The first is, some of them will be narcissists and don't realise what they are. They met a narcissist which was more capable than them, which recruited them and harnessed them. However, their own need for the prime aims was enabled by allying with this more capable narcissist. And the conviction of Mr. Raniere is, of course, a threat to the control of these relevant narcissists. Because of their narcissistic perspective, they cannot see that the evidence demonstrates that Mr. Raniere has committed these crimes and therefore has been rightfully convicted of them. Instead, their narcissistic perspective dismisses the evidence. The trial judge was biased, for instance. The evidence was made up. He was framed. It didn't happen like that. People have lied about him. Think about occasions when you have tried to confront a narcissist with evidence to point out that the narcissist has behaved in a particular way. The narcissist will not accept it, will he or will she? Why? Because your presentation of the evidence threatens the narcissist's control. And when that happens, the narcissism unconsciously states, our control is being threatened. This must not happen. Therefore, what we must do is fight back against it by asserting control in some way. And that is often done with the first line of the twin lines of the narcissistic defense, denial. I do not accept what you're telling me. That didn't happen. That was made up. It's fake news. The second line of the defense will be to deflect. Allege that whilst the evidence exists, it's been manufactured. That it's been interpreted incorrectly. That the individual who's made a decision about the evidence is biased, corrupt, has been paid off. The narcissist will respond with circular conversations, word salads, maybe physical violence, whatever is necessary to assert that control. You, of course, become confused and bewildered. How can the narcissist not see that I am right? How can the narcissist not see that the evidence supports what I am explaining and diminishes their own position? Remember, this is down to the narcissistic perspective. The narcissistic perspective creates a distortion field, so that when the narcissist sees this evidence, he or she doesn't see it in the way that you do. Instead, the narcissism causes the interpretation of the evidence to be in a way which allows the narcissist to assert control, so the evidence is rejected, deflected, diminished, poured scorn on, tainted, denied, whatever it takes. And similarly, with those individuals who continue to support Mr. Raniere, notwithstanding his conviction, what is occurring is that some of them are likely to be narcissists, because narcissists can be recruited by other narcissists. And in those circumstances, his conviction and the evidence threatens the control of these supporting narcissists. Therefore, and in all likelihood they are unaware narcissists, their narcissism rejects it, and they can't see that he has committed these crimes and that he was rightfully convicted. Instead, through the lens of their narcissism, because this evidence and conviction threatens their control, their narcissism rejects it, denies it, diminishes it, deflects from it. And thus, no matter what you would say to them, and no matter how you would try and convince them, each time you would try and do so, you would threaten these narcissists' sense of control, which results in the rejection by them of that threat. And that is why some of these individuals continue to support him. Some of them, however, will not be narcissists. Why then are these individuals continue to support him? Many of them will be normal individuals and possibly even empathic individuals. The empathic individuals will continue to support because basically their addiction to the narcissist means that their emotional thinking is rampant and is causing them not to see the situation as it actually is. Seen through the lens of emotional thinking, they do not accept the conviction. They sympathize. They support him. And this is the corruption of their various empathic and narcissistic traits, because they will have both, which causes them to support Mr. Raniere, notwithstanding evidence to the contrary, and that suggests that they ought not to. Think about it in the same way, whereby you might have wanted to continue the relationship with the narcissist. Even though you have seen evidence that suggests this person isn't good for you, you still feel compelled to want to spend time with them. You want to see if it will work. You want to give that person another chance. You want to get to the bottom of why this person has behaved that way. And when your emotional thinking is reduced, you look back on your behaviour and think, why on earth did I think that way? I can see now that was completely ridiculous and not logical. It might take you a long time to get there, but you will get there. What has happened is, at that point in time, your emotional thinking was so high, it distorted your viewpoint so that you didn't see things in a logical way. and thus you continued to interact with the narcissist because your addiction to the narcissist made you continue to do that. The addiction created emotional thinking distorted matters, so you continued to engage to feed the addiction. You were in effect being conned. And therefore, there may well be empathic supporters of Mr. Raniere who are continuing to be conned by their own addiction to this particular narcissist. Their emotional thinking is created by this addiction, so they can't see that what they are doing is incorrect. They believe, seen through this distorting lens of their emotional thinking, that he is innocent, that he has been set up, and they are being conned by their emotional thinking. With regard to normal people, in essence, they have similarly been brainwashed. They're not operating through an addiction, and in essence, it may well be that they are following a particular mentality of those around them, that they are being similarly manipulated by the narcissists within that supporting group. But it is likely that the main members of this supporting group are narcissists and some empathic individuals who are being misled by their emotional thinking, wanting them to continue to engage with both Raniere and the other narcissists in the group, and therefore they don't see what is going on. The article continues. Last month, 8 of his female supporters, including a former actress, corporate lawyer and doctor, released videos online that pushed back against the group's reputation as a sex cult, saying they consented to being branded and were never forced into sexual relationships with Mr. Raniere. At a news conference on the day of Mr. Raniere's sentencing, his supporters defended their time with NXIVM. Their comments came after they watched a former NXIVM member tell the court that Mr. Raniere sexually abused her starting when she was 15 and he was 45, an allegation that Mr. Raniere's lawyers have never disputed. That behaviour of sexual abuse demonstrates a sense of entitlement, treating an individual as an object, a lack of emotional empathy, both in terms of A, the fact that it's abuse, B, the fact that he's 45 and she was 15. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of accountability for his conduct. An individual with emotional empathy would not have behaved in that manner. They would be accountable, recognising that they were far older than that person, and also that it is not an appropriate way to behave by abusing somebody. Furthermore, it shows a lack of boundary recognition. The effort to exonerate Mr. Raniere was in keeping with how NXIVM had long dealt with its critics. Former members who challenged Mr. Raniere's methods were shunned from the community, silent treatment, and sometimes targeted with lawsuits that drove them into bankruptcy. Narcissists will use, in certain instances, legal process for the purposes of asserting control, particularly where there is an economic imbalance between the narcissist and the victim. If the victim is not in a position to be able to afford lawyers, or that they are forced to incur expenditure on defending legal proceedings, no matter how spurious, they are eventually exhausted economically and have to give in, either becoming bankrupted and losing, or compromised into accepting settlements which favour the narcissist. The use of legal proceedings is common by higher echelon narcissists. The lawyer is a hired gun, and, irrespective of what the evidence might actually be, through the narcissist's perspective, they see that the person who has taken against them, who has spoken out about them, which of course threatens the narcissist's sense of control, must be brought under control. And therefore, as the article explains, former members who've challenged him, and either wounding or challenge fuel, become shunned from the community. They are given a silent treatment, which is a method of assertion of control. And in other instances, there is a different assertion of control by the provocative action of a lawsuit. The article continues, NXIVM lured recruits with its expensive executive success programs. Polished, glossy, part of the seduction. Tapping into a desire for personal growth within elite circles. Tapping into that personal growth will have enabled this particular narcissist to harness two aspects. Within certain elite circles, there will be narcissists. and therefore offering to enhancement for those individuals panders to that sense of control, panders to grandiosity, panders to superiority. Furthermore, the empaths which operate within those elite circles will be drawn in on the basis of a desire to engage in personal growth, something which is often witnessed with them. Around 18,000 people have taken its courses since 1998. What made NXIVM an illegal enterprise, prosecutors said, was the fraud, extortion, immigration violations and sex crime that took place over 15 years under Mr. Raniere's direction. Those allegations of fraud, extortion, immigration violations all demonstrate a sense of entitlement to behave in a manner at the choosing of Mr. Raniere. It also demonstrates a lack of emotional empathy for the victims of the fraud, the victims of the extortion, the victims of the immigration violations, the victims of the sex crimes. It also shows a lack of accountability. There is no adherence to the law. It has been repeatedly broken. Also notice the reference of these things having taken place under his direction. That demonstrates the particular nature of a cult leader, that they are able, through the assertion of control, invariably beginning with charisma, and then using malign manipulations, to cause people to do their bidding, lieutenants and members of the coterie, to commit crime on behalf of the narcissist cult leader. A jury convicted Mr. Raniere on all counts after a 6-week trial last year. 5 women in his inner circle have also pleaded guilty to felony charges. Those 5 women are likely to be lieutenants, and certainly members of the coterie. And yet Mr. Raniere maintains a small and loyal following among people with careers in law, medicine and business. In letters to the court last month, Mr. Raniere's supporters touted their degrees from top universities. Intelligence is no defence to the manipulations of a narcissist. Cults like going after people who are bright because they will represent the cult very well, said Rachel Bernstein, a therapist who specialises in treating former cult members. Intelligence is not a predictor of cult involvement, and she is correct about that. And the observation that she makes that cults like going after people who are bright because they will represent the cult very well demonstrates the character trait acquisition that occurs by the narcissist with regard to the cult members. It shows also the narcissistic mindset of the narcissist that those people are just an extension of the narcissist himself, and a lack of boundary recognition between the narcissist and those individuals. Cult experts say it is not uncommon for followers to stand by a leader who has gone to prison or died. Clinging to the group may be more comforting than the prospect of leaving. The assertion of control by the narcissist in that group, or the corrupting influence of emotional thinking, causing people to think it is better to stay rather than leave. And they go on to write that the prospect of leaving may require finding a job or reconciling with family and long-lost friends. In effect, the empathic individual who seeks to leave the group is doing what? Imposing no contact. And that emotional thinking says, it's too hard to do that. You'll have to go and find a job. You'll have to reconcile with your family after what's happened. You'll have to reconcile with long-lost friends. All of that's far too difficult. Don't do it. Stay where you are. How many times have you, when you have sought to impose no contact with the narcissist, thought, I can't do it. I can't cut this person off. She's my mother. I can't go no contact. I have children with this individual. I can't go no contact. I need the money. I can't go no contact. People will think that I'm a bad person for not standing by him or her. And therefore, consequently, what you're seeing there is that the individuals that cling to the group are either narcissists who are asserting their control by remaining, and their narcissism will not let them see what is actually going on, or empathic members affected by emotional thinking who are prevented from essentially going no contact. During the pandemic, Mr. Raniere's supporters regularly danced outside the Brooklyn jail where he was housed. they released a jailhouse phone call with Mr. Raniere as a podcast. These individuals are facilitating his assertion of control. One vocal supporter of Mr. Raniere is Nikki Klein, the former television actress from Battlestar Galactica, who now describes herself as an advocate for criminal justice reform. Miss Klein said that she was part of the secret women's group inside NXIVM called DOS, an acronym for a Latin phrase meaning Lord Master of the Obedient Female Companions. Notice that this title demonstrates the grandiosity of the narcissist by creating an inner sanctum, that it elevates certain individuals within it, which plays into the idea of them being special, and notice obedient female companions. That the narcissist is asserting control over them and rewarding them for being obedient, because what does the narcissist require? The provision of control. Trial witnesses testified that the group had a pyramid structure where lower-ranking women were referred to as slaves, objectification, and overseen by female masters, who reported to Mr. Raniere. The individuals who oversee them are exhibiting a lack of emotional empathy towards those individuals and were most likely narcissists themselves being controlled by Raniere. To honour their vow to the group, the women were regularly required to hand over what was known as collateral, including nude photographs or the rights to financial assets, according to trial testimony. This is all part of the assertion of control. Again, think about your own experiences where, during the seduction period, the narcissist may well have asked you to send nudes, to send videos of you masturbating, etc. At the time, the narcissist is doing that as part of making you feel special, of saying how turned on they are by this material as part of the seduction. But the problem with providing that, of course, means that at a later juncture, the narcissist is able to utilize that material against you in a threatening manner for the purposes of asserting control over you. And if you have any concerns about that use, please go to the Knowledge Vault and obtain "Will the sex tape be used against me?" In this instance, the fact that it was described as a necessity to honour the group, control, and the method of handing it over as collateral means that this was, in all likelihood, a calculated act. Most narcissists, when they ask for nudes and sex videos, aren't doing it with a view to blackmailing you at a later juncture. They're doing it to assert control over you in the moment. However, in this instance, there is more of a clinical and calculating behaviour associated with it, which demonstrates that not only was it being utilised to control the individual in the now, but it was also being obtained in a calculated manner to use against them in the future. Prosecutors said it was extortion and fraud. Former DOS members testified at trial that they obeyed Mr. Raniere's sexual orders under the fear that their collateral would be released. Ms. Klein was not charged, but prosecutors said in a court filing last month that she had directed some women inside DOS to delete the collateral from their computers and transfer it to hard drives stored with her lawyer. Ms. Klein denied the allegation in an emailed statement. Ms. Klein is married to Alison Mack, the former television actress who is awaiting sentencing after she pleaded guilty to crimes stemming from her role as a top DOS recruiter. Prosecutors have called it a sham marriage to allow Ms. Klein, a Canadian native, to stay in the United States. If it is a sham marriage, again, that is typical behaviour of a narcissist. Such behaviour is done with a lack of accountability, a sense of entitlement, and a lack of emotional empathy. Ms. Klein said in her statement that the marriage was born from genuine love. With regards to Mr. Raniere, she said, "If I discover that predatory underage sex took place, I will denounce it wholeheartedly and reconsider my views." She and other followers of Mr. Raniere were now reviewing the trial evidence and keeping an open mind, she said. In the videos released last month, Ms. Klein and 7 other former DOS members said they voluntarily participated in the master-slave relationship. Everyone's going like, if you say anything different than what's been said, then you're an idiot. You've been brainwashed. You've been abused, said Sahayo Hayatel, who describes herself on LinkedIn as a humanitarian and entrepreneur. In that instance, that demonstrates the assertion of control by a herd mentality, the threat of being labelled and insulted. But Mr. Raniere's supporters have gone further than just sharing their experiences. They have sought to publicly undermine confidence in the legal system by attacking the prosecutors, the victims, and the judge who oversaw Mr. Raniere's trial. All of this will undoubtedly be partially the direction of Mr. Raniere, the further assertion of control in order to enable him to perhaps seek an appeal, overturn his conviction, and also, in some instances, this action will be taken of the own volition of these individuals, whereby where they are the narcissist, they are doing it to assert their own control by attacking the individuals that have threatened both their control and that of Mr. Raniere. Remember, the narcissists that support Mr. Raniere, where there is an attack against him, it's an attack against them, because it undermines their sense of control also. Several of these supporters showed up to the Brooklyn U.S. Attorney's Office in September with a video camera to ask prosecutors to sign an affidavit swearing that they followed due process. This shows a sense of entitlement to behave in this manner. Last month they filed a letter with the court that accused the government of tampering with evidence on Mr. Raniere's computer. Mr. Raniere's lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, said during his client's sentencing that he did not believe the claim was valid and refused to file it himself, even after Mr. Raniere and his supporters asked him many, many times. Mr. Agnifilo, operating from an alternative perspective, has evaluated the evidence and sees that it has no merit, there is no veracity in it. Notice how Mr. Raniere and his supporters do not. From their perspective, they will truly believe that there has been government tampering with evidence. This is the paranoia that is rampant with the narcissist and, of course, is the altered perspective, whereby the narcissist will, through that different perspective, assert that the evidence against them has been falsified. They truly believe it. Prosecutors have said that NXIVM was financed largely by Claire Bronfman, an heiress to the Seagram's liquor fortune, who was sentenced to over 6 years in prison for her crimes on behalf of NXIVM. It's highly likely that Raniere, as a charismatic individual, commandeered the finances of Bronfman, sequestration of another's assets, sense of entitlement to use the assets of somebody else for his own uses, no sense of accountability for his own actions, lack of emotional empathy. Ronald Sullivan, a lawyer for Miss Bronfman, said she was not funding the recent publicity effort. None of Mr. Raniere's supporters testified at trial, which would have required them to answer questions under oath during cross-examination by prosecutors. That tends to undermine the veracity of their claims and also demonstrates by refusing to testify, or at least not offering to do so, that they are asserting control by avoiding putting themselves in a situation whereby they may well be contradicted. Notice, however, that the reasons given for that are as follows. Miss Klein and another woman, Michelle Hatchett, wrote in affidavits to the court last month that they chose not to testify because of threats from prosecutors. The judge dismissed the claim, saying there was scant and highly questionable evidence of any intimidation. Accordingly, the failure to testify is a criticism of those supporters. It threatens their control. And when that threat to their control manifests, their response is to say, oh, the reason I didn't testify was because I was being threatened by prosecutors. Deflection, blame shifting. The judge finds there was no such evidence or highly questionable evidence that ever happened. But again, it's likely that those individuals are narcissists themselves, and the threat to their control at the suggestion that they were doing something wrong by not testifying means that they have to assert control by the provision of a response, namely to blame shift and say that they were being intimidated. Playing the victim. Pity play also. Miss Hatchett, appearing in a September television interview to defend NXIVM, said, I think there is a difference between being branded and getting a brand. But during the criminal investigation, Ms. Hatchett told prosecutors' interviews that she wanted to leave DOS after she was assigned to seduce Mr. Raniere, according to a court filing last month.
She only stayed, she told prosecutors, because of the material she had handed over as collateral, including letters addressed to police that accused her siblings of abusing their children, the filing said. That material, again, shows a lack of emotional empathy towards this individual in order to control her. It shows a sense of entitlement, a lack of emotional empathy, and a lack of accountability. In an emailed statement, Miss Hatchett said, "As a result of my experiences in DOS, I am a stronger, more confident woman than I ever thought I could be, and I have an unwavering trust in myself." Mr. Raniere's relentless publicity campaign, his publicity campaign, of course, being the assertion of control and the smearing of others, a smear campaign, backfired with one long-time follower. Ivy Navarez, 43, who dated Mr. Raniere, said in an interview that she decided to denounce him publicly after seeing the recent efforts to promote him. She said the attacks on his victims were abhorrent. Again, attacks on the victims of a narcissist are not uncommon. They are all part of the assertion of control. When those victims speak out at the behaviour that they have experienced at the hands of the narcissist, that threatens the narcissist's control. In effect, the hornet's nest is being kicked, and therefore in the circumstances, what the narcissist must do is respond by asserting control over that individual, and one such way is to attack the victims by suggesting that they are lying, by seeking to intimidate them, by looking to blackmail them, to extort them, to disclose sensitive and confidential information, i.e. the collateral that is referred to. At Mr. Raniere's sentencing, Ms. Navarez told the court that she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder after Mr. Raniere subjected her to indentured servitude during her nearly 17 years in NXIVM. It is not uncommon for a victim of a narcissist to be subjected to behaviour which results in post-traumatic stress disorder, and indeed to liken it to indentured servitude is entirely accurate because of the possessory nature of the narcissist and the control that is asserted. Pulled in by Mr. Raniere's teaching, Miss Navarez moved from New York City to NXIVM's headquarters near Albany, New York, where the group controlled her rent, her income, and her work visa as a Mexican immigrant. Again, the almost hive mentality of NXIVM, all at the direction of its charismatic leader, seeks to assert control over the victim. Her rent is controlled, her income is controlled, her work visa is controlled. She is isolated from anything else which could affect the group's control of her. She explained that Mr. Raniere demanded she weigh 95 pounds. Controlling her weight is another method of assertion of control over her, and claimed his spiritual energy would kill him unless he had sex constantly, she told the court. Such a protestation by Mr. Raniere is magical thinking, another manifestation of the behaviour of a narcissist, alongside grandiosity, and of course is another manipulation, in the form of pity play, a grandiose pity play. You must have sex with me, otherwise my sexual energy will kill me. Complete horseshit. However, he will believe this for the purposes of asserting control over her. In early 2018, the government subpoenaed her to testify before a grand jury. On the advice of a lawyer provided by Miss Bronfman, she invoked her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, she said in the interview. She left the group a few months later. It took her almost a year to stop viewing Mr. Raniere as a Jesus-type figure, she said. And that shows the consequences of the heightened emotional thinking that this victim experienced, so that thereafter she still, notwithstanding his treatment of her, revered him as a Jesus-type figure. Her addiction to the narcissist created this emotional thinking and caused her to continue to look at him in this manner. She explained, "I was in the bubble of NXIVM for so long that I didn't know how I could navigate the world." That is the manifestation of complete control over an individual, that you become controlled to such a degree and brainwashed by the narcissist and the narcissist cult and organisation that you are stripped of your coping mechanisms, meaning that you cling on to the organisation, you become made dependent upon the narcissist and the narcissist cult, because otherwise you wouldn't know how to survive. Ms. Navarro said she wanted to warn the public about what she sees in an effort to rebuild NXIVM and Mr. Raniere's reputation. Notice again that the efforts to rebuild are at the direction of this narcissist. that he cannot accept any responsibility that he has done wrong. He has no sense of accountability, no emotional empathy. There is no remorse, no conscience. There is no, I have been convicted, I will serve my sentence and keep my head down. No, from his perspective, he has done nothing wrong. And that his reputation must be restored, because the restoration of that reputation is the assertion of control. Miss Navarez continued, "If you want to go on believing he's God on earth, that's fine," she said, "but don't go around enrolling people into this very dangerous criminal organisation." That sums up the perception of certain members of believing that he is a form of God, and that is the way that the narcissist, a particularly charismatic one, causes people to see the narcissist for the purposes of then controlling them in what is a malign manner. The individuals that are absorbed into the cult and controlled by both its leader and lieutenants within the organisation cause those behaviours to suffer, cause the members to suffer a range of repeated and malign behaviours, yet they don't see that what's actually happening because of the nature of emotional thinking and the level of the assertion of control over them. They fail to realise or act upon the fact that they are being abused, and even though there is clear evidence of that occurring in the cult, they do not see it. It is clear from just this article that Keith Raniere is a narcissist and has operated a cult for the purpose of asserting his control over many people, both narcissists and empathic victims, in order to extend his grandiosity, assert control over numerous people through a wide range of initially benign and then malign manipulations. There is certainly more analysis that will follow on this individual, but this is a starting point in terms of demonstrating to you that the behaviour of Keith Raniere and a number of those who are currently supporting him and maintaining that he has done nothing wrong are indeed narcissists. It is very clear from this analysis, from this relevant article, that Keith Raniere is indeed a narcissist and is somebody who has operated a cult. This is very much a total cult run by a narcissist. More will follow.